I want to turn this little storage room into a DIY content studio. For the last 2 years, I've been running my business from my laptop. I live in a small apartment with my girlfriend and this potato, and I don't have space for a desk setup, so I just used our kitchen table. But my girlfriend had the audacity to say that my desk setup is ruining the aesthetic of our apartment, so I did what any man with some self-respect would do and kicked her out. Okay, she kicked me out, so now we gotta find a studio. I found this small storage room that is around 4.5 by 3.8 meters. I'm a huge fan of DIY projects with low budgets, so for this video we have the challenge to keep everything under $1,000. The first thing we wanted to do is to paint the walls in gray. So we went to the store, got all of the necessary equipment and started to paint. None of us painted a room before themselves, so it took us way longer than it should have. And we made some mistakes, it just didn't look very smooth. We got one of the most expensive paints because we really liked the color and we thought it suits the studio vibe very nicely. Our first takeaway here is don't go for the most expensive paint if you don't know how to paint properly. We decided to save money on the equipment, so we got some very bad brushes and they just kept staining and they just didn't work properly. The next thing I wanted to add is one of the essentials for any studio: black foam acoustic panels. I wanted to cover the left side of the wall with these panels. Now, before you say that we unnecessarily painted that wall in gray, I've seen a lot of people using these panels and there are always some small gaps, so if the wall behind them is white, you can spot them really quickly. I decided to go for the cheapest available option off of Amazon without glue at the back. My first impression of the quality was surprisingly good, and I thought this was going to be a super easy step of the project. Our brilliant first idea on how to stick these panels to the wall was to use double-sided duct tape. We went to the store just to get that, came back and tried to stick them on the wall. Of course, this did not work because the duct tape didn't cover enough of the surface of the panel to make it stick evenly on the wall. The next idea was to get spray glue, so we went back to the hardware store and got 1 can to try it out. I covered the whole surface with spray glue and they stick to the wall really nicely. It took me around an hour and a half to cover the whole wall and I was really happy with the result. The next morning there were already some people in the studio, and when I came in I thought that they took off all of the panels because the wall was empty again. I confronted them about ruining my work, but they said that they have already fallen off overnight. I touched the back side of the panels and they were actually not sticky anymore. So the spray glue does hold for a couple of hours, but it's not a long-term solution. We started running out of ideas and we decided to go for the stickiest glue I have ever seen in my life. I believe it is usually used to glue leather shoes together, and I don't even know the official name of it, but it held perfectly. Now don't worry, you don't need to get industrial glue, I have a better solution for you. We didn't order enough panels to cover the whole wall, so we had to order again, and this time I went for the more expensive variant that has the sticky back side. If you want to go for these acoustic panels, please make sure to go for the more expensive variant with the sticky back side. It will save you a lot of time and headaches. Something that really bothered me about the floor plan of the studio is that in the corner we have a pole which causes these weird edges. I decided to cover it with artificial plants and LED lights. This was amazingly cheap and easy to install. All we had to get was 5 pieces of these square plastic plants off of Amazon that were $10 each. So just the plants were $50 in total. We also got some screws, some green cable binders and some cheap LED stripes. And all of that was just $10. So in total it was just $60 for materials. The only thing that I was scared of was that the plastic plants were too stiff to bend them around the corner. But they ended up being perfectly flexible and it was very easy to get them in the right position. To connect the plants to the wall, we simply screwed in these metal plates into the wall directly and used cable binders to fix them. If you couldn't already tell, we are absolute amateurs and had no idea what we were doing. We also added some old softbox covers from the inside to dim the LED lights. At the bottom we also had enough space to hide all of the cables and the gear. I'm very happy with the results. The LED lights produce a very subtle and natural lighting, and being able to switch the colors to fit the theme or the brand of the video is just a nice add-on. For just $60, I believe this is one of the best value for money projects I have ever seen. For the second background wall, I wanted to go for something natural, so I got these popular wooden acoustic panels. There are a lot of manufacturers selling these wooden panels online, but I got mine from the local hardware store because it was the cheapest option. I got 3 panels for $90 each, so it was $270 in total. If you're getting them from your local hardware store, just make sure you have a big enough car because those things are huge. I really liked the look of them in the studio, but there was just something missing. Over the last couple of years, I've seen some amazing creators having beautiful LED stripes built into their wooden acoustic panel. So I thought if they can do it, I can do it. And yeah, big mistake. This was one of the most painful projects and it took us over a month to complete. Let's start with the basics. What materials do you need? Of course, the first thing you will need is LED stripes. Make sure you don't get the LED stripes with the single LED dots, but the ones with a single LED stripe. You will also need a cable rail to put the LED stripes in, with a plastic cover to dim the lights. You will also need a new cable for each individual LED stripe, so make sure you get the right amount of cable beforehand. In our case, 15 meters of cable was enough to cover all of them. To connect the LED stripes with the cables, you will also need soldering equipment. You will also need some clamps and a controller to connect the cables. Also a power supply and a power socket for smart homes. If you want to dim the lights with the Philips Hue app, you will need the Philips Hue bridge if you didn't have one before. Since I have no idea about how to work with electricity, I decided to get some help from friends, and I do recommend doing this with a professional. We cut the LED stripe into pieces of 3 times 1 meter and 4 times half a meter. This made it easier because we already had 3 cable rails in the right size, but we had to cut 2 of them in half. The next step is to put them in place and to drill holes below them for the cables. Now this was one of the trickiest parts because we had to connect the LED stripes with the cables by soldering them. The issue is that we have a fire alarm in the office and soldering causes a lot of smoke. I asked the security guards of our office building what would happen if we triggered the alarm, and they said that we would immediately alert all of the authorities and we would have to pay for the whole thing. It wasn't worth the risk for us, so we had to find another way of soldering the cables without triggering the fire alarm. So the only option we had left was to do it at home, so we took all of our equipment, went to my place and did it on our balcony. So if you're planning to solder anything, make sure you do it in a safe place. As soon as this was finally done, we just had to connect all of the cables with the power supply, and it worked perfectly. We screwed the panels into the wall and used a simple black adding to color the screws. I set up the Philips Hue app and put the power of the LED stripes to 5% because we found that that's the best lighting for videos. I'm really happy with the result because it adds a special visual element to the background. This was by far the most expensive and complicated project, but it was worth it. To finish the lighting setup, we also added some more Philips Hue products. We got these RGB LED light bars and put them on tripods to create colored backlights. I saw Imangazi going for this look and really wanted to add this option to our studio. You can also control and save your settings in the Philips Hue app. So this is the complete price I paid for the whole background and lighting setup. Of course, I've made some mistakes along the way, but maybe you can learn from that and get it even cheaper. So this is the final background setup, and I will add some sample videos at the end. I also added 2 dartboards to host tournaments with a live stream to the room next door and a live score. Maybe I will make a video about darts in the future. Apart from that, we also added some optional things like this wall storage system to make sure all of our gear and cables are easy to find. We got this from IKEA and it was also very cheap to set up. We also added some plants and an empty Red Bull fridge because we're not sponsored by Red Bull, but Red Bull, if you're watching, please send us something. Thank you. All in all, this is a very versatile background setup and you have a lot of variations of the lighting of the background to get different styles and vibes. We use it with a table or with a chair or with a lounge chair or in a podcast setup, and it works in horizontal and vertical mode. What would you add to the studio? Let me know in the comments. I will try to link all of the products I used in the description, but some of them may only be available in specific countries. And if you're ever in Vienna and need a place to record, let me know. I'm really looking forward to creating content in this new studio, and if you're curious as well, make sure to subscribe to my channel to see it in action.